All right, guys, we're on day two. Hope you're moving along and hope the talk about metabolism helped a little bit. But I want to come back to body type. And this is a question, whenever I throw out information like this in a blog or article, a lot of people want to immediately know how to label themselves, how to categorize where they are. So when we talk about body type, the old phenotypes, ectomorph, mesomorph, endomorph, those describe a general body shape and consequently tell us a lot about our metabolic structure. Originally, this whole concept came about from a psychologist years and years ago, almost 100 years ago. And this guy came along and said, hey, I think people's behavior really can be predicted by what they look like. I can just look at somebody, notice what they're doing, kind of how their behavior is, and maybe see what psychological chemistry they have, what makeup they have. And it was like this. You would see somebody who was really, really thin and maybe fidgety and think, well, that person's very prone to anxiety and so forth, and on and on and on. So he thought the shape of your body could predict how you behave. And to a lot of degrees of certainty, that's actually true because I think it's actually a chicken or egg question. I think it's more of our internal chemistry that dictates what we do and what we look like. If I'm a really hyperactive person and I'm constantly moving and so forth, I'm just going to be thinner. I'm burning more calories. So I thought that was a good correlation, but it's probably a little bit backwards in application. But it is a good illustration of the fact that how we look does give us some indication of what's happening on the inside, even how we behave. So let me talk about those three terms: endomorph, mesomorph, and ectomorph. So in endomorph, and anybody who's overweight or they struggle with losing weight, they always want to kind of blame it on their metabolism a little bit, and there's absolutely some standard of evidence there that show that to be true. You could go get tested, again, see exactly what your metabolism is. Hopefully you guys are tracking your food and you're able to fine tune that even closer. You had the MacroDoc calculator to give you a great starting point for that. But at the end of the day, it truly is body chemistry. We have a hormonal base that's incredibly genetic. I mean, you can see from parent to child, even grandparents, siblings. Of course, there are mixtures of genetics there. But everybody really does follow a certain pattern. In my family, I come from parents who, on my mom's side, she was pretty thin. Her dad was pretty thin, but her mom was a little bit on the heavy side. And on my dad's side, there's a lot of obesity. And I even have some people in my family who have died at over 400 or 500 pounds. And my siblings, I've had 2 or 3 siblings who've been at least 100 pounds overweight in their life histories. I have 4 children, and I can see an exact replica almost of my children in some of our ancestors, from my wife to me to my parents, her parents, and it just almost follows an exact line. You always get those gene expressions from somebody. So again, it's not so much, let's blame it on somebody as that's good information. I need to know that, so then I might know what I need to do to counter that. I always used to think I had those genetics like an endomorph from my dad's side of the family, because as an adolescent, I gained a lot of weight. I was a chubby little kid, and then I was able to lose it through my own effort, got into fitness and eating well. And then over my professional bodybuilding career, I definitely did not have a problem gaining body fat, and I always lost body fat very slowly. So at one point, I had my hormones checked, had a hormone panel, found out that I'm subclinical hypothyroid, meaning I could be medicated if I wanted to, but it's probably not necessary. And so my metabolism is as slow as you can get and still be normal. So I have those traits to be endomorphic. But a true endomorph is somebody who unfortunately just suffers from pretty extensive obesity. You've seen somebody who doesn't just gain 20 pounds, in the first couple years of marriage or the freshman 15 in college, but they might have been really heavy as a child. They store body fat everywhere. You see sometimes in a chronically obese somebody where the wrists and the ankles and just there's obesity evidence all throughout their body instead of just gaining kind of the classic beer belly, that kind of thing. So the amount of body fat cells we even have in our body can be dramatically different. Somewhere between 15 billion and 150 billion body fat cells in our body. So with that kind of range, you can see where genetics comes into play. So an endomorph is simply going to have a slower metabolism. They're going to have the propensity to gain body fat faster, but that doesn't mean that that person is stuck there. You can still lose weight. Through my own behavior, I've been able to maintain my weight, to be healthy, that kind of thing. But over time, ironically, I've seen a little bit as I've aged, some of my physical characteristics and probably even cognitive characteristics really match some people on my mom's side, like her brother, who was pretty thin, like my mom, who's been pretty thin, and her dad, who was pretty thin. So I might be a pretty good combination because I also have kind of some slight mesomorphic characteristics. In other words, I'm able to gain a good amount of muscle and maintain it. I was able to achieve pro status in the bodybuilding world and do pretty well there. And at least, parts of my anatomy, arms, legs particularly, I was able to do really well in just gaining muscle size. And an ectomorph, somebody on the other end with a high metabolism, wouldn't be able to do that. An endomorph certainly can gain muscle, but then when you're losing body fat to get down to those extreme levels that, like I did as a professional bodybuilder, you would lose a lot of that. So my point is, we do have a combination of genetics, but we also reside on this body type or phenotype continuum. You guys are going to hear that a lot. That's just a biological universal truth. There are continuums in everything. There's no one exact label for anything or anybody. So I have those endomorphic tendencies where I can gain body fat really fast. I have a slow metabolism. That's certainly part of that. But I lean a little bit toward maybe the midline, halfway between there and mesomorph, somewhere in there, where I can also gain a good amount of lean body mass. And those mesomorphs are kind of that middle group that I think most of us would love to be. This is kind of like the NFL linebacker, the person, male or female, who just has a great structure, wide shoulders, good muscle quality. They can be lean. They're kind of naturally lean and athletic. You just see those people walking around, maybe without even an extensive amount of physical training, and they just look great. And then when they do train, they respond like that. So it reminds me, I had a new client who just hired me recently, and this person just started lifting weights a little while ago and wants to get in better shape. And she sent me some initial photos. And I mean, oh my gosh, she looks like one of the Williams sisters, professional tennis, just massive muscle. She's going to be able to do great in whatever she wants to do. And that's that genetic base. You're born with it or you're not. We can get to that point where we're maximizing our genetics, and that's the real issue here, is wherever we find ourselves on that genetic continuum, how can we understand it and how can we maximize it? Because I know a lot of ectomorphs as well, the people on the thin side who train and train and train, and they would love to have 20 or 25 pounds more muscle mass. They would love to look like those mesomorphs, and they just can't. The physiology of the muscle tissue, the length of the tendons and so forth, it's just not there. That is genetic. But can you still be extremely fit and healthy, and can you build as much muscle as possible? Absolutely. So the endomorphs are trying to get leaner, the ectomorphs are typically trying to gain muscle, and everybody wants the best of all worlds, but we have to know where our genetics lie and how we can maximize that to get to our best. It's not about comparing to each other, it's about being our best. So that's day 2, guys. I just want you to keep that in mind so you can keep your goals at an appropriate level, know what you're dealing with, what your struggles and challenges might be, and then we can attack them from there. So thanks, guys. Have a great day.